The title of the movie is The Secretary. The movie begins with an attractive young woman named Lee, who was working in an office while both her hands were tied with a bar and she did all her office work with her mouth. Then the scene moves to 6 months ago when she was released. She has a mental state from the institution that her mother takes her to. One day there was a party at her sister's, but instead of enjoying it, she stands in the corner and watches everything with mumbling eyes. Then her friend Peter comes to her and asks her to dance, and she begins to dance with him, and now she begins to enjoy the party. After watching her happiness is that her father approaches her and hugs her while expressing his desire to see her always in this state. She has a strange feeling while dancing. She goes back to her room and extracts tools from under her bed mattress, which she pulls out. She takes out a box and opens it. The box contains a knife, some arrows, and other sharp objects. She takes out a sharp tool from the box and begins hurting herself. She actually suffers from a mental disorder and mistreats herself whenever she feels an unusual emotion or witnesses a tragic incident. The next day, she sees her parents fighting and quarreling for an unknown reason, which makes her depressed and leads her to hurt herself with a hot item. Whenever she sees her parents arguing, Bearer becomes depressed. She hurt herself, and her parents were very worried about her. They had everything that Lee could use to hurt herself, but they did not realize that she had a box full of tools that she could use to hurt herself in a hidden way. Lee decided to attempt suicide one day while swimming in the pool, but she was saved by her mother and felt she was worried about her, but she refrained from arguing with her because she knew that would only make matters worse. Lee was admitted to a mental institution for rehabilitation, but the matter did not work, knowing that her parents were worried about her. Lee decided to seek treatment for her instead of staying at home and watching her parents argue. She chose focusing on a job of some kind. She began taking writing lessons from school and quickly mastered the skill after she became proficient in typing. She began searching for job vacancies and discovered a job as an advertising secretary in a newspaper. Lee and her mother travel to the specified address to conduct the interview. She sees that it is a chaotic house. She enters the house. She saw the old secretary leaving with tears in her eyes and some wounds visible on her body. While she goes inside to conduct the interview, Lee's father stays outside, and there she meets Mr. Gray, the boss, who placed an advertisement for the secretary. He asks her about her experience and asks some standard interview questions, then orders her to prepare a cup of coffee for him. The coffee takes me to the kitchen, and when she starts preparing the coffee, she realizes that the water bottle is empty and needs to be replaced. Instead of calling Gray to replace it, she does it herself, making her clothes wet in the process. Gray appoints her as his new secretary. After learning about her intentions, she feels overjoyed that it happened. She has this job like her mother because it will keep her busy in the office. She has now officially joined the office to try her patience, as Ray always assigns her difficult tasks. Gray gives her some inappropriate tasks, in addition to the writing work she does. He continues without complaint, and one day he ties my hands. Lee used a penis and ordered her to do all her office work with tied hands. Here the story returns to the present. A few days later, he told Lee that he had accidentally thrown an important file into the trash and gave her the task of recovering it for him. She did so, and in the end she found this file in the trash. After some searching, then she brought the file to Gray. Instead of expressing gratitude to her, showed her a duplicate file and said he no longer needed it. He constantly criticized her work and yelled at her when she made a mistake. Gray noticed that Lee was hurt and was curious about her. In the evening, Peter invited Lee to dinner at a restaurant and proposed marriage to her. But she refused, calling her like that. She was not ready one day during the call. She spoke to Lee politely, which Gray noticed and shouted at her for being so polite to customers. He tried to teach her how to talk to customers on the phone, but she cannot imitate the volume of his voice. Gray is attracted to Lee, but his attitude as a rude boss never praises her and always yells at her for making mistakes. The next day, she commits another mistake to me. But this mistake is a typo and not a simple mistake. Gray begins yelling at her and telling her that he will be punished for her bad behavior this time. He orders her to bend over a table, and she does the same thing while he hits her from behind. This punishment pales in comparison to the harm she causes to herself. Even these slaps tempt her. She enjoys this. She is now attracted to the color red. She deliberately commits mistakes, just in order to raise Gray's anger. He also enjoys being disabled because it gives her mental peace, so he punishes her in different ways. She loves the color red completely at this stage, and whenever she wants to be punished, or more accurately, when she wants to have fun with Gray in his company, she makes mistakes. She loves how wonderful he treats her, and she wants her friend Peter to do the same thing, but he cannot get over her, so he denies treating her this way. The next day at work, she intentionally writes the mistakes to me again. When Gray notices the mistakes, he summons Lee to his office there. He gave her the order to bend over the table, and she gladly did so, but this time instead of hitting her on the hip, Gray began to have intimate relations with her in this position. Then Gray felt a bad feeling about what he had done while Lee went to the bathroom thinking about Gray. Then Lee was fired from her job. She tries to convince him that she enjoys working here and is ready to accept any punishment, but he orders her to leave the job. She falls in love and then slaps Gray in the face. Then he leaves, shedding tears, with her property. She tried to work in many companies, but she did not find mental satisfaction there, so she returned to harming herself, and her parents decided to marry her to Peter to prevent her from doing this. On the wedding day, Lee realized how much she loved Gray and rushed to the office wearing a wedding dress there and asked Gray to marry her, but he refused, claiming that he did not love her. Then she sat in his chair and threatened him to stay in his office until he married her because of her behavior, and Gray punished her by ordering her to put her hands on the table and stays still until he orders her to move, and she does the same while he calls Peter secretly to convince him to get there and tries to convince her that he loves her more than anyone else and wants to marry her, but she simply rejects him, so he leaves. Then her mother arrives with food and offers her some, but since she is still waiting for Gray's order, she refuses. So her mother left to no avail. Her neighbors, co-workers, and other people approached her trying to persuade her, but she refused to budge and waited for Gray to give the order. Lee had been waiting for Gray's order for the past 3 days without moving her hands and even without using the bathroom. Everyone became worried about her and the media arrived to cover this drama, romance, and finally, Gray approaches her when she finally faints from hunger and exhaustion, and her hands are still in the position he asked her to be in. When Gray tries to give her a flavored drink, milk begins to open her eyes. Then he carries her to the bathroom, where he showers while having sexual intercourse again, and after a few days, they both marry each other and bring her closer in different situations, while punishing her, and she loves it, and here the movie ends. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more of this content.